Alright fellas, now Anthony Joshua vs Daniel Dubois was announced last week for the 21st of September at the 90,000 capacity Wembley Stadium. This will be Joshua's third run out at Wembley Stadium and will be for Dubois' IBF World Title after he was elevated from interim as Usyk vacated that title. I feel like the announcement for this fight didn't get the hype it deserved, and on top of that, in the promo release so far, it has raised the question of, is Joshua a bit rattled already? So today we're going to talk about why this fight matters, what both fighters will bring to the table, and how this fight will shape the future of heavyweight boxing. So let's get right into it. The real return of Anthony Joshua to world title level boxing has been anticipated for many years now. Pretty much since his fight against Usyk, I would say that none of his fights have been in competition to be really overly excited for. Of course, Otto Wallin is a good opponent and Ngannou brought an element of, hey, who knows, but the return of Joshua to actual world title competition has been long awaited. To get to this point, well, Joshua has had a string of exciting wins, getting the fans back on board with that idea that the old Joshua is back, as well as the financial support and backing from the Saudis to make these big fights happen. Whilst Dubois has had quite the ride to end up in this big of a fight, I think the one thing you have to give Dubois is his lack of fear to go against anyone at any time. The bloke is 26 and has already gone against the likes of Joe Joyce, Usyk, Jarrell Miller, Hrgovic, and now Joshua, just to name a few. He's a throwback fighter in the way that he hasn't ducked any fights and jumps at whatever opportunity that gets put in front of him, and that fearless attitude has resulted in him landing in the position he is currently in. Looking at Dubois' path in his last few fights, he fought himself back into world title contention after a loss to Joe Joyce and found himself in Poland in a fight for 3 of the big 4 against Usyk. In this bout, Usyk controlled a lot of the fight, yet Dubois had a big moment in the 5th where he landed a body shot which put down Usyk but was ruled a low blow. Usyk took several minutes to recover and the fight continued, in which Usyk would end up outboxing Dubois and eventually securing the KO. Around this time, this is where the Saudis really started to get involved in heavyweight boxing, and his next fight would be on the Day of Reckoning card against Jarrell Miller, which was the card which also featured Anthony Joshua. Just looking back for a second, how stacked was this card? Like, it's actually unreal. He would end up finishing Miller in the 10th by TKO after a pretty dominant performance, which would lead him to a fight against Hrgovic on the 5v5 card. This fight was really a make it or break it moment for both fighters, with many before the fight writing off Dubois and seeing it as an early night for Hrgovic. And it looked like this would be the case early, with Hrgovic doing incredibly well over the opening rounds, yet Hrgovic would end up tiring out and Dubois would end up managing to take control of this fight and pull off the TKO in the 8th round. The result of this bout put Anthony Joshua in an interesting position. Now, he's not going to wait around for the result of Usyk Fury at the end of the year, while additionally the Saudis would want him to fight sooner, so the 5v5 really gave him 2 options. Now, Deontay Wilder is out of the picture, so the bloke who beat him, Zhilei Zhang, was a potential option. The huge upside of the Big Bang was a draw from the Chinese audience, yet his size could have been a problem for Joshua. Even though Joseph Parker had been on a fantastic run of lately, because of Joshua's first dominant performance against him, we weren't going to see a rematch. And really, all that left was Dubois. Dubois now has an elevated title, which is a huge upside for Joshua. If he beats him, it makes him a world champion again and is a huge marketing point and is the ticket to lead him to a potential undisputed match. While additionally, the surprisingly friendly relationship between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, because of the Saudi involvement, has enabled this fight to happen with ease. So this is where we find ourselves today, with Dubois and Joshua confirmed for the 21st of September. This card was also rumoured to include Inoue, yet that never materialised. We have ended up with a very UK-centric undercard. Before we talk about what we can expect from this fight, of course the only place to watch this fight is on DAZN through DAZN pay-per-view. Alongside the DAZN pay-per-views, the subscription is more than worth it to get access to a bunch of different quality events and lead-up content. So if you want to support the channel, please use the link on screen and down below to sign up. But back onto what we can expect from the fight. Both fighters are known for their power, Joshua with an 89.29% KO ratio and Dubois with a 95.24% KO ratio. It makes power a real factor. Both fighters are pretty physically imposing, but Joshua's height and reach should help him keep control of the distance and keep Dubois at bay, especially with one of Joshua's strengths being that strong jab. Dubois did show in his last bout to have really solid stamina and conditioning, yet this really shouldn't be a real problem for Joshua either. Joshua has also shown to have vulnerability to pressure and power punches coming from the smaller man, which has resulted in his only losses, in which Dubois could capitalise. While Dubois has showed some limitations in dealing with more skilled technical opponents, such in his loss against Joyce, Joshua's decent boxing IQ could be a real problem for Dubois. I think with the track record of both fighters, it's going to be either an early KO or a back and forth war. Both fighters will be looking for that statement KO, most likely ending up in an exchange of heavy blows where really either man could end up victorious. You should really expect a high stakes action packed fight which should be worth the money. I think personally Joshua will pull off that win, but don't be surprised if he's really tested by Dubois' raw power and aggression. Since the fight was announced, we also had a face-to-face and press conference between the two. Really the only notable point out of the whole presser and face-off was the two kicking it off at the face-to-face. Why did they kick off in the face-to-face? Him and Dubois have a bit of history. Like the many big-time boxers, they have crossed paths in sparring previously, with the story of sparring playing into the promotion for this fight. Well, to keep it short, Dubois was like he's ready to fight there and then, and Joshua took that as disrespect. Dubois said he wouldn't be intimidated, and then they both looked at each other like they were going to do something with Frank Warren in the middle of it all, but nothing really happened. The main food for thought this provided was if Joshua was on edge to respond to basically a harmless comment, what does that say for his attitude for this fight in general? I think only time will tell over the next few months and as the promotion progresses. Yet, I think if this isn't staged, it was really a 1-0 score for Dubois. Joshua was heated, Dubois wasn't. That's why it's a win in my books for Dubois. Looking to the future, recently in a phone call between Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury and His Excellency, it was signaled that that fight is the one that the Saudis want next. Joshua would of course have to get the job done against Dubois, yet it was said win or lose against Usyk, the Saudis want Fury in the ring with Joshua next. This is of course because it's still one of the biggest fights in boxing. The battle for the UK between two blokes with two pretty big egos, and really their pride is on the line. I think for the first time really ever, we can say that this fight is probably next for Joshua, assuming that he wins against Dubois. If he doesn't win, does Joshua have the stamina to go around again and try build himself back up? And depending on how bad that loss would be, he would probably end up finding himself in a Dubois rematch. If Dubois pulls off the win, it thrusts him into the global spotlight. He would be seen as the future of heavyweight boxing and would of course hold that world title, which he already does, but many opportunities will now be at his feet. With other than the rematch, it would enable him to choose really whoever he wants next. Yet once this fight happens, I think it will be a real entertaining watch. I think the build up will be good and the stakes are incredibly high and it has the potential to shape the division for the future. Can't really ask more out of a matchup. But now I want to hear what you think about this matchup and how you see this going down. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing or liking, that would be massively appreciated. But thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.